Hey everybody, it's Restartt here, bringing you another Arena video, and I thought I'd start on the Tactics series. Now let me pop this up here. As you guys can see, I've been doing pretty well this season. I'm actually Aether Master now, and I'm slowly climbing up those ranks, although I'm never going to catch up to. You guys see what Aether Master is right now. There's some people that have just been dominating it, so I'm at 75, but it's not like the other leagues, just to start out with ranked. If you go below 0, you drop down a rank. If you go 100, you go up. But since there's nothing above Aether Master, some people have just been climbing the points and are at 800, 500. Now they are giving prizes for it. But anyways, that's enough about the ranking system. Just know Aether Masters, Diamond, Platinum, Gold, Silver, Bronze, and that's by clicking on the games and then going over here. So, been going pretty well this season, and I thought I'd share some things. And the first thing we're going to do, I can get everything set up here, is we're going to go over just some simple strategies over here for our map here. New Detroit. Now, New Detroit is a pretty, I want to say, simple map, but it's got its own strategies that are somewhat different than other maps, so it makes it a little bit unique. So first off, what makes this map unique right here is that it's super divided. There's no way to cross the middle. There are, in fact, only 2 tiles right next to each of the ships that you can cross on. So what this means is you're going to have 2 very skinny but very basic lanes. There's not a lot of trickery or there's this one ship charge space in the middle. Other than that, they're fairly solid. They have some blocking pillars off on the side, some charges off on the side, and a kill spell in a very hard to reach location, except with one specific champion that we'll talk about in a little bit. But what you want to know is that this generally devolves into a couple of different strategies. One is rush one side, take 3 champions off to one side, and try and just put anything that can reach over the center with range, some no line of sights like Bug or Baron. Or maybe you've got somebody that can switch sides, like Luna, to fly over. Or maybe you're just trusting that you're going to build up to that get off my portrait exodus, which kills somebody in your home row, or bait and switch. But if you see a weakness on their solo side, you can try and run through with some damage, but it's generally not advised unless you're really what you're doing. So the basic strategies for this, we're going to go over, since basic tactical video here, is we're going to look at your side where you have 1 person on the defender side, and if it's 2 melee champs, it's generally just a walk onto the charge, walk off, position yourself so you get the advantage. Then you've got 2 people over here on what we'll call your offensive side, the side that's really trying to win it for you instead of charge down the lane. There's different advantages to putting different characters in each, and since it's a basic tactical video, I'm going to assume you're limited on characters, so we'll go over a couple archetypes for each. The first one is 2 melees over here. If you both decide to put a melee character off on this side, like I said, it generally devolves into charge, off the charge, off the charge. Now the person with the longer range or the higher damage may start to creep up a little bit on the other person, especially if it's somebody with a sacrifice ult. Sacrifice ults go great in this lane. We're specifically talking about more so Martel and Harlequin than anybody else like the Butcher, because they get rid of the opponent in the lane and they generally win you that lane, but you want to make sure you go first if you're going to be using especially that Harlequin, because what's going to happen here is that you're going to dance, then Harlequin's going to run forward and sacrifice himself. Generally, if Martel puts himself next to Harlequin, because he's so slow, Harlequin will be at least 30 squares away, so that Martel moves forward, Harlequin hits him and walks away, then Martel moves forward and Harlequin double hits and wins, so he doesn't want to initiate that. If you get in a bad position, though, and Martel can just walk in and use his basic attack on you, you can hit him and walk away, but he can come in and kill you next time. So you want to make sure as Harlequin you never get hit first. As Martel, you want to be looking for that spot where you can hit Harlequin first, because you're going to win that damage trade. But if he's a good player, he'll keep him back a little farther. You also want to be wary of one where he's at 3 Aether, he gets 1 for starting his turn, 1 for hitting you, he's at 5, and then he uses his ultimate, he kills you, doesn't take any damage for himself, so it's generally managing your Aether, and this is where the Aether management shells come in, just winning this lane or not. Now you can also have some range characters over here. Generally, then it's the melee's turn to rush in, switching sides so that the melee never gets, or the range never gets 2 attacks at once. Oftentimes, too, with early scorching can really decide that side. Walk in, hit them. Okay, the other person from another side does scorching. You've beat them up, and you're far enough that wherever they spawn, you're going to beat them up. So if you have range, Baron is especially good for this, for just keeping the opponent back. Every time he can, just kicking them farther back so they're never in range to walk up and start that engage. You might get lucky with some hits and then either be able to kill them with Bug, or just be able to throw some high damage over to the other side in a little bit of AoE with Bloody Mary, or even hit the ship. I mean, her long range could just move over, take pot shots at the ship, whenever. But that's how that lane generally goes. Now on the other side, you've got some options here, but what you want to know is Crank. On small lanes, Crank is fantastic. He is wonderful. And here's the reason why. Let's pop up a Crank figure over here. There's my Crank. And we're going to put him in this square. And this is the golden square you need to remember if you have Crank. Now, obviously, there are some things that stop it, but in general, this is the best Crank spot possible. And I'll show you why with a little bit of, let's put out, a Corporal here. Just a Corporal from the enemy team. So now, here's why. First off, if you put down Crank early, and you want to put down Crank early into one of these back slots, especially over here, charge him, and then move over here. Now here's what you've got from the enemy team. If they go into either of these spots, anything on the side, if they end their turn there, Crank walks forward, knocks them off the edge. Freak kill. Crank walks forward, knocks them off the edge. Any of these spots Crank can knock off the edge. Even if it's Corporal and he decides, oh, I'm going to knock you back to here, no matter what, Crank can walk forward too, and then he'll knock any of these 3 spots off the edge. And you're like, yeah, but what if they decide not to go there? Well, that's why this spot is golden. If they decide to go anywhere in any of these spots, you can bounce them off a wall for 4 damage. Especially if they're over here, you can hit 6 damage on this person, or you can just move over and kill them, depending on how you want to save your Aether. But even back here, you can step forward, bounce for 4, and then hopefully your lane partner can bring in the extra 2 damage or whatever you do need to kill. And then you're saying, well, that's great against melee, but what about ranged? What if the enemy puts, let's say, a character here or here with range? We're talking maybe Bug, maybe Baron Rouge. Baron Rouge is actually a very solid counter to Crank because you can keep him out. But even then, they can't sit forward in either of these 2 to hit the other person in the lane, because if he stands here, let's put up one of those characters right now. Let's say you've got Bug over there as one of the most popular range champions. If you put Bug in this spot, 1, 2, bounce him against the wall for 4, the other person only has to do 1. Put Bug here, walk forward, or walk forward 2, bounce him against the wall, ton of damage, and 4 damage, the other person in your lane has to do very little. So Crank, especially in this lane over here, this straight line, is one of the strongest things you can possibly do for yourself, and I highly encourage players that have him to really get used to him on this map, because he can be a terror, especially with people that can guarantee the 2-in. Crank Aurora are super hard to hit, and they just wander around controlling this side, really knocking out enemy champs and advancing forward, getting that charge down and attacking. That's the other thing for this side. Aurora can control it really well, and then when she gets up to her 5, get 2 free poke on the ship. But in general, if she gets caught out in a bad engage, she doesn't have that super ulti to get her out. She will just die for that, so a lot of people like to run her over on this side to control. Bug and Baron are both great control pieces, because if you've got somebody on the other side, now let's pretend we're black team, and he won the trade for some reason, and he's walking up, Bug and Baron can both shoot over that wall, and this is actually one where Luna shines. Luna can, as soon as somebody wins a trade on the other side, let's put up a Luna over there, huh? As soon as somebody wins a trade, hopefully she's at 2 to 4, she can pop over and start dealing some damage herself, and of course with the assistance of shells. Now I've been talking about shells a lot. On this map, bait and switch is awesome. Your normal strategy and shells should go together, so I can't tell you which shells to play, but give a little bit extra weight to a bait and switch on this because the sides are so separated. If let's say Black's team's over here, and this guy won his trade and is advancing down the lane, you just run forward 3, bait and switch. And now he's with the rest of his team over here. You still have 2 defenders over here, and you can pop back over if you need the extra help, or you can start running down the lane, but it basically negates the fact that he just got past you very easily, and since it's such a straight and short lane, it resets a lot better than in the other ones. Usually all your characters are in the back, and if you bait and switch, it's not going to do a lot. With this one, it does a ton. Same thing, a lot of people put slow characters over in this lane. So if you have a bait and switch, you can run forward into their lines, and now let's say they have 2 other characters out here. We'll just throw out a Harlequin and a Martel. So they've got some characters over in this lane. You run forward, but then you bait and switch over to the other lane. Now they've got a slow character that can't really stomp forward as well, and you're right here to start dealing damage to the ship because they just put out a slow character whenever theirs had died. So that's the basics so far that we covered. Is you want to put somebody who can win a one-on-one trade on this side, especially with sacrifice ultis are great, but if not, somebody who can control the lane. You want to put on this side a big bruiser and somebody to back them up. 2 melee or 2 squishy people, 2 less than 6 health, are really just a little bit too easy to kill, and you're going to get wiped, and they're going to just fly down this lane and start dealing damage through your group. Luna's a little bit better than normal. Bait and switch is a little better than normal. Since, however, there's not a lot of trickery, there's a lot of characters that can attack from farther than 2 away over here. So Get Off My Porch is useful, especially on this lane where there's a lot of melee characters. But in general, I kind of like the Exodus to just win a lane and walk down it since they are so separate. Now, some of you say, why not Butcher? Butcher is good on this map, but there are maps that he's better for. Really, his only pull kill he can pull off is if he's on the solo lane, which is hard for him to win most of the time. Because on the other side, if they're in this middle square, he'll just pull them to that square and they'll stop. He'll do 2 damage, but it's not the best for him. Really, if you do want to have a Butcher play, and let's get rid of one of our characters and put up the Butcher, then what you really want to do is pair him in that lane with somebody who does decent damage. Martel is great, Harlequin's great, somebody else. You generally don't want the 1 to 2 damage or another 2 damager, because what you want to do is get him in a position where he's going to be able to pull an enemy champ in when it's not their turn next. You hope they don't have a good shell, and then this person goes ahead and does 2 damage. So you have to pay attention to turn order, and you have to put down Butcher first, and then this guy next, whoever he's going to be. So make sure when you're initially placing, if you want to do that strategy, it's Butcher, then his ally, and the person you pull doesn't go next, so they can't just attack and walk away. Instead, it's somebody, or double attack and kill somebody weak like Harlequin. Martel probably wouldn't die, but he does a little less damage, and he has to use Aether to deal that 5. But in general, a Butcher pull plus Martel dealing 5 damage, a regular hit, and then his 2 Aether, which he can always guarantee if he's next to somebody, will deal 7 damage and will kill everybody but a Martel. Harlequin will kill everybody. If you have one of the 2 to 3 champions, they might kill some, they might not. But actually, Corporal's really good for that too, because he can always do a basic attack and then a knockback into the wall for 3. Again, those knockbacks are coming into play. Crank's a lot better for the knockbacks because of the diagonal and the fact that this wall here means you can always get a diagonal on somebody. But it's worth considering if you want that 3 movement speed, that knockback potential and that knockback potential, hey, Corporal's great. But that would be the way to play Butcher here, although generally he's better seen on other maps. So I think we covered most of the basics here. You want no line of sight is good for crossing over, but in general you want to be able to win this duel yourself, pack some shells that'll help you defend if you lose a lane, something like Exodus, Get Off My Porch, Bait and Switch, or something with high damage like Blaze. And then you just mobility between sides is good if you think you're going to lose, but otherwise you can put somebody that controls it, and since they're such short lanes, knockback is, I mean, awesome. Basically, the only places they can go are a couple middle squares here. before they have to be really, really scared of Crank and his diagonal knockbacks, or Corporal and his pushing directly off the side, or Baron Rouge and his knockback 2. Fantastic for controlling these very straight lanes. Normally his problems are diagonals, and you can still get into a lot of diagonal problems, especially early on when he doesn't have 2 charge. There's a lot of, move up next to him, but then he can always move forward and slam him into a wall. It's a little harder on this side because he'll just slam him into a personal charge. Obviously this isn't Baron Rouge. The only other thing I want to say is that, as always, Aurora is my girl. She is fantastic, and she is no disappointment on this map either. If you have an Aurora on your map, what you can really do is you can set up some awesome plays here where you just control where the enemy goes. Now they can't be 2 away from you anymore. Now they have to be 3 away, or risk getting double attacked and then the other person in your lane finishing them off. Or Crank's a good start, and if you really wanted to pull off Butcher in the solo lane, because he can kill some people, he can, if he gets a pull and attack, then he's done 4 damage. A lot of people can't kill 6 health immediately. You do have to watch for people that can. Charged up Martel, Harlequin, even Corporal and Luna can manage it. Or they could just attack and if they can get away from you, but generally with 3 they can't. But then if you manage to survive to the 2 health point, she's controlling the lane so they can't walk up and attack you. Or Butcher's going to walk forward and pull them into the death square, and they can't be 2 away, so the enemy's just so far back that they're really not going to have a chance to do anything at all. And that'll just help you if they ever get 2 in a row. Crank rocks up, knocks them both back into each other. Baron does his thing, knocks them back into each other. It's great. And for those of you that were wondering why I'm saying knockbacks doing extra damage, it wasn't in the tutorial. Knockbacks do extra damage. If you hit another champion but still move, you get 1. If you hit another champion or a wall that can't move, that has a hard wall behind it, takes 2. So that's the reason we were talking about that. But let me know, guys. I know this video's been going on a little long, so just let me know if you have any tactics or strategies that you want to see. Those are the basics for this map. We'll get to advanced stuff sometime soon. And yeah, have fun in Arena, guys. See ya.